Our mission. Helping Parents Heal is a nonprofit organization dedicated to assisting bereaved parents to become shining light parents by providing support and resources to aid in the healing process. We go a step beyond other groups by allowing the open discussion of spiritual experiences and evidence for the afterlife in a non-dogmatic way. Affiliate groups welcome everyone, regardless of religious or non-religious background. Attendance today at this meeting is voluntary, and we are here for the benefit of learning from and sharing with other parents whose child has passed away. It is understood that our discussions are intended to be confidential and not designed to replace traditional therapy or spiritual counseling. However, these Zoom meetings are very helpful to parents all around the world, and they are posted on YouTube so that affiliate members who are not able to attend this meeting live can also watch. Helping Parents Heal offers a wide variety of speakers to allow parents to be informed about many possible ways to heal, to connect with their children, and to learn about the afterlife. The views expressed by our guests do not necessarily reflect those of Helping Parents Heal, and we ask that you take from their presentations whatever may benefit you personally. Welcome, everyone, and I'll turn it over to Tricia to introduce Gordon.
Thank you. Well, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are in the world at the moment. And I have spoken on this forum, as you know, before, and very much enjoyed it. And tonight I am presenting my very good friend and very respected colleague, Mr. Gordon Smith. Gordon was one of the mediums that Professor Roy and I tested or experimented with in our mediumship program. And of course, Gordon did extremely well with that. Along with that, I have seen Gordon over many years. Gordon, 22 years.
20-something.
20-something years.
It's 20, I was in my 20s and you weren't.
Shut up. You can see we're friends, can't you? Yeah. By the way, everyone, this is a Scottish attitude. We like to kid each other or have a joke with each other. So shut up, Gordon. Apart from that, I was going to say something nice. I have seen Gordon over the past 20 odd years give amazing information in public places, just absolutely amazing. Now, tonight, Gordon is also an excellent speaker and teacher about spiritual matters, not in an airy-fairy way, but in a very practical, ordinary way that everyone can understand. And Gordon is certainly going to begin tonight by telling you a little bit about himself, how he works, and what life after death means to him. Over to you, Gordon.
Thank you, Tricia. And can I say thank you to Mark and Tricia for putting this together and allowing me to come and speak with you all today. And it's always a pleasure for me to share my work with people, because it's not just the evidence or the messages that mediums give that is important, but quite often there's a philosophy there, there's a teaching that is bigger than just the individual message. And one message going out in a crowd may touch someone's heart and help them, give them tools to heal. But in actual fact, there's so much more can be given when we work with our mediumship from coming from the correct place. And this is important to me, guys, because not only am I a working medium, but I teach people who aspire to be mediums. And today there are so many people out there trying to be mediums. And I'm going to be really, really honest, and I don't mean to sound pompous. I've never tried to be a medium in my life. You either are one or you're not. And people who come along to me for some kind of tutorial, I'll ask them, why do you want to be a medium? That's the first thing I would ask. And I'll ask several questions of all of you later, like, why would you want to go to a medium? Because people need to be careful where they go. You need to make sure your medium is credible. You need to make sure that your medium is honorable and authentic. And this is something that I would say to any body of people who is looking seriously to have a message from the other side. Make sure your medium is tried and tested and that you can trust them. For many, many years, in fact, to this day, since 30-something years, I've been practicing mediumship. It's been part of my entire life since I was a child. But for the last 30 something years, I've been practicing mediumship. Now, this doesn't make me special or a saint or anything, but I just never felt that I had to charge money for doing readings for people. This was one of the things I felt. I felt it was a gift that I had. And therefore, I gave my gift to people who needed it. So I wouldn't just do readings for people because they wanted it. If somebody said, "Oh, should I marry this guy?" And I said, well, actually, the fact that you're asking a medium, the answer's got to be no. I mean, really, you would put your love life, your future in the hands of a medium? No. I says, and it's not what we do. As mediums, we are there to try and give people evidence that there's a life after death. It's that simple, guys. And this is where I will teach my students, to look, are you proving something to someone? Are you giving them evidence that there's a survival, or are you just saying clever things, one thing after another? Because if you guess enough, you're going to get some things right. I mean, the lovely Tricia would, I'm sure, agree that anybody in the public could get at least a third of evidential things correct. If they gave 100 statements, 30% at least would be seen as correct. But as a medium, none of these things are important to you. Your job there is to try and heal people whose hearts are breaking, people whose lives have stopped because someone around them has died. And especially in the case where it's younger people. And not only am I a medium, but I have studied grief and bereavement and counseling and all of these things in my time, because I always felt that it was very important for me to actually have a knowledge of how to handle people. So you may have a gift in one way, but you should also be or behave appropriately with the general public. This is also important for mediums. And again, we'll come to that part later. But I really believe that in my work, I've been fortunate because the spirit world have given me or taken me so many places to use my gift in so many countries, and countries where I can't even speak the language. And it's one that Tricia doesn't know. Tricia knows a lot of my work, but I think it was 3 years ago I was asked to work in Germany. And that particular evening, somebody had told me that I was to do a demonstration of mediumship. And I said, well, no one's told me. No one had actually told me that I was doing a dem. So it was very spontaneous. It just occurred. People came from all over Hanover and wherever we were, the surrounding areas. And we had a very, very packed room of people. And I didn't feel like doing this. I said, my heart's not in this. I don't feel it. I don't feel the spirit around me. And I tell you this because it's important. Any true medium should know that you don't just do things to please people. It's got to be right. And as I stood there and nothing was coming, and everybody was looking, and I thought, no, this is dreadful. And I said, ladies and gentlemen, you will have to forgive me, because if I don't feel this, I can't do it. It's got to be true. And then out of nowhere, I said, I need a seat. I felt really dizzy and I sat down on a chair. This has never happened to me in my life as a medium, this particular thing. I sat down and lo and behold, I went into a trance in seconds. And a young German girl spoke through me to her mother. And she gave her a message and she said, Mama, actually in German, that she said, you didn't kill me. You didn't end my life. You ended my suffering. It's a big difference, Mama. And the whole place just sat there and tears were coming down people's throats. People's throats were choked with, this little girl actually chose to come and speak directly to her mother. Now that has never happened to me in a public demonstration. It has happened in private one-to-one readings. The odd time, it's not an occurrence that happens all the time. But I realized that all those people who came in that night, though there was one message given, it had more impact than if I'd given every one of them their own individual message. That one moment where a child was able to actually speak in conversation to her mother using the medium, it was beyond belief, is all I can say. Even for me, it was beyond belief. I came out of it and I could feel my face was wet, my clothes were wet, and I thought, oh. And everybody just sat looking at me with their mouths open. And somebody asked me something in German and I said, what? They assumed I could speak fluent German, and I couldn't. I said, "What? I'm sorry, I don't know what," and they had to translate it back in English. So it was the most beautiful thing that the spirit world did. But what it proved, guys, is that I'm only the medium. The spirit are the ones who do the beautiful work. And if the medium's mind is open and the medium is honest and true, then the spirit world can do really whatever is required that night. And I say this because many people say, I want a message from my son. Wanting a message and needing a message are two very different things, and they're seen differently by the spirit. So somebody can want a message, but it might be the absolute wrong moment for them to get one. This is where I do speak to my public. I do speak to people when they'll say, but I'm desperate. And I'll say, I'm going to ask you to just try and be patient here. And as soon as it happens, when the moment's right, we'll do it, I promise you. And it'll be much more advantageous to you than not. And that very thing happened to me, I think it was 4 years ago. I mean, it's difficult for me to recall just an individual instance because there's tens of thousands of cases that I've been involved in, tens of thousands, maybe more. And it was 4 years ago, and I had a call from a church, a spiritual church in London, where I'm the president. And they said, there's a man who's been on to us, he's desperate. And I said, okay. I said, well, I'm in Scotland at the moment and I'm going to be traveling. And I said, so can they be patient with me? And he said, it's not for the man, it's for his friends or colleagues. We don't know, but apparently this family are desperate. And once again, the timing of spirit is impeccable. It is impeccable. And I trust it to the hilt. So when I know I'm not to do a reading, it's not because there's anything wrong. It's just because it's being saved so that the moment will be so poignant that it will create an effect of healing. It's not just evidence for the sake of evidence. It's evidence for the sake of healing. And that's what a real medium does. Otherwise, why do it? It's just a clever trick. If you just come up with people's names and addresses and think, I can do that every day. But that's not important. What's important is an episode needs to come to a conclusion in somebody's life. It needs to be grown from. And as a medium, I recognize this especially when it's parents. Subsequently, several weeks passed and I had another phone call to say, would I again consider coming to London, or they would fly to wherever I was in the world, this couple. I said, I'm going to be in London in 2 weeks' time if they're prepared to wait. And again, I felt, oh God, am I making these people wait? It must be terrible, whatever their loss is. But my heart felt, no, don't change it. Don't get sympathetic. Remember, guys, there's a big difference between what we call sympathy and compassion. And for me, compassion wins out. And sometimes compassion means saying no until the right moment. So I waited. And by this point, 6 weeks, I think, had passed. And I got to see this couple. I went in with a very lovely man and woman, probably about 40 years of age, in and around that age. And you don't need to be a medium to know when somebody's lost a child. You really don't. You can see written across their face. And so I knew in that moment, and I said to them, look, I know that you're probably here because you've lost a family member very close to you. I said, but don't tell me anything, and just let's sit and see what happens. I explained to them, do you know what happens when a medium works? Because every medium should put their sitters at ease. You don't just start giving messages. And I spoke to them a little bit about what may occur, what may not occur, and how they should respond. If you do understand something, speak back to me. If you don't, it's okay to say you don't understand. You really won't stop the flow of the reading. Within a second, I had the sense of a presence standing beside me. And it's a strange thing when mediums work, because there's a sense of somebody there. There's a sense of something strange in the room that wasn't there. It's the atmosphere that changes, actually, guys. That's really what happens. The atmosphere in the room changes. And then all of a sudden, if you're a medium, you have access to different faculties like clairvoyance, which a picture may come after you get that feeling. And in my mind, I visualized a tall, slender young man with blonde curly hair. And I thought, oh. And I just repeat what I see. So you're like a reporter. As a medium, it's not yours. You're just delivering a message. You're a postman. You don't create these messages, you deliver them. And then my job was just to deliver the information that was coming. And I said, there's a young man here, I described him. And then I said, oh, his name's Alex. And that was how it begun. And I heard the woman, who would be the mother, take a sharp intake of breath at this point. And I said, it's okay, love. I said, just relax. He's here. And then I continued to give this message. And there was, as I say, evidence came through. The boy told us the name of the village he lived in a very small eastern part of southern England. I'd never heard of the village in my life, but the word came out of my mouth and I said the name of it. He mentioned his school, he mentioned all these different things. And the couple kept nodding and nodding and nodding. And here it comes. This was the important. The reason for all of this happening was for one thing, the message. Now, the message that came through my mouth, and I found it hard to stop it, was I felt myself becoming more stern with the lady. And I said, you need to go home. You need to stop sleeping on your son's grave. And the man started to cry. He just let out an absolute sob. And I looked at him, and then he just cuddled her. And I said, now, this is Alex. He's telling you, you need to go home. Stop that. He's still with you. He's at home with you and the rest of the family. He doesn't like to see what you're doing. He said, he told her, you're hurting yourself and you're hurting the family, Mum. Please don't do that. You're not helping me. And you're certainly not helping yourself. Now, the importance of that message, because that poor lady was beside herself with grief. That poor lady, and I'm sure all of you listening will know what that feels like, that moment. As a mother, she felt, I can't leave my son there. I don't want to. And the reason the father was desperate to get his wife to, it was only me. He said, I just want that medium. And eventually they waited the time, but that message was relevant. It was important and it had an impact. And it was at the end of that particular reading, there was something that's personal and private to them, which I can't say and I wouldn't want to, but it would mean nothing to anybody. But had we done it 6 weeks earlier, this information would not have been available, the stuff that came through. So the orchestration of that reading, of that particular message was incredible. And again, I don't say that for me. I'm just a player in this. I look above and go, wow, you guys are incredible what you've done today. And I left walking on air, not because I had done a good reading, because I had helped someone. And even though I could not take away those people's grief, no medium can, I gave them tools to work with. I gave them something to use in the future that could begin a different stage of their bereavement. And that's all a medium can do. If we can do that much, then people have to heal themselves. There's a healing process they have to go through, but it's a different thing. When I think 6 months after that particular reading, I had a lovely letter from that particular couple. And the lady had, thanked me profusely. And she said, we recorded it and we often listen to it. She says, in some parts now have a relevance that didn't really have the same impact back then. And she says, and the wonderful thing is, and I hope you will share this with other people. She said, we didn't just have a reading with a medium. We got to spend time with our son. She says, because every time we listened to the tape, we realized he was in the room. You were talking to him like he was there. And then we both realized he was there. And I wrote back to her and said, I'm so pleased at this. I said, and do you know what? You have 4 children. One of them's in heaven. He's not gone. So always refer to him as being, he's there. And the more you identify with this and recognize this, the more he can still be part of your life. You're not pulling him back. You're not holding him from progressing anywhere. That's all nonsense that silly mediums say. None of that's relevant. He's there because he loves you. He's there because you love him. And that bond of love is what creates this lovely flow between the two worlds. And when a medium can get access to that, that's the kind of thing we can do for people who are in a terrible, terrible state of loss. Since then, that lovely young man, Alex, has started to bring certain things to his mother, little signs, her own little signs. And again, it matters not to anybody else, but they're her personal things. And she wrote me and said, could this possibly be Alex? Because every time I think about him, these particular objects appear. And I said, yeah. And she said, do you know why it was actual little seashells. They don't live anywhere near the sea. And she said, but I find them in my car. I go into my car and there's a seashell sitting on the seat or on the floor of the car. She says, I walk into an elevator and I'm thinking, oh, it's his birthday tomorrow. And I look down and there's a seashell. And I said, she didn't tell me what it was at first. I actually told her. I said, he's putting a seashell to my ear. I said, and I can hear the sound of the sea. And she laughed and she said, oh my God, I'd forgotten that. She says, when he was just a little boy, the first trip we took to the seaside, I told him to listen to the sea and the shell. And that was his code with his mother. And every time he comes through, that's him saying, that's his calling card, his signature, if you want to call it that. And you all will have that. It's just some people don't know how to look for it, or they don't know how to register it. And they just see it as coincidence. Oh, it's coincidental. Well, I'll tell you a story, guys, because I love this story that a lady came to me when I was a barber, a hairdresser, some years ago, and I worked in Glasgow in Scotland. And a particular lady was sent to me because she'd lost a son. And she entered my salon. We closed the salon for business that night. And I sat with this lady. My usual gave her my talk on, you can just relax and let me do this, la, 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 la. And the lady sat there, and as often people, when there's been a terrible tragedy, you can feel that as a sensitive, not even just as a medium, as a man who's sensitive, I could feel the depth of this woman's, I would say, anger. And it was cold, very, very cold. She was distant. She felt to me like she wasn't in her own body. She didn't feel present in the room. I thought, this is strange. But because the grief was so much for her, I think people can do that. They can put their mind into grief is an altered state of consciousness. And this lady was at the extreme end of that altered state of consciousness. And she was not even present. And I bet you a lot of you understand when I say, like, if somebody spoke to her, there was a delay before, oh, right, yeah. Because she wasn't really interested in the everyday life since the loss of her boy. Anyway, we began the reading, and the lad came through. And all those years ago, I never forget a spirit's name. I can't remember the woman's name, but the spirits I've never, and tens of thousands of names are in my head. Everyone I've spoke to, or everyone who spoke to me. And this lad was called John. And John had committed suicide. He was only a teenager, and he'd thrown himself off a bridge just outside Glasgow. He committed suicide because he was gay. And he didn't know how to tell people. He was being bullied, all sorts of things. All of this came through the reading. And this is how I got to know it. His mum didn't answer me. She just sat like this all the time. And as it was going, and in my head, I'm saying, come on, John, tell us something. Where's that moment? We need that moment that starts her heart, that brings her back in her body. And all of a sudden, I said to her, oh, it is him who brings the feathers. And she sat back like this. I said, you have them in your bag. You brought them to ask me that question, didn't you? And she opened her bag, quite a big bag, and it was full of every kind of bird feather you could find. And I just laughed. I said, are you making a quilt? And she started to laugh, and this smile came across her face, and I heard her son saying, thank you. And I thought, oh, and I was so touched that this little boy had said to me, thank you for helping my mum. And it was like, wow, because I don't get involved with spirits. I just pass the stuff. And that never leaves me, because I knew that day that lady came back into her body and she cried. Of course she did, because she hadn't cried since he died. And I said, you feel like a terrible failure because you couldn't stop your son from dying, don't you? And she said, I do every day. She says, I want to punish myself. And I said, do you know, that is so natural and normal that you want to do that. I says, because you're a mum and you didn't stop it, or you didn't see the signs. She says, I did see the signs. I just didn't do anything about it. I thought, if I don't interact with this side of him, it will change. And she says, I'd do anything to get my boy back. And I said, your boy is back. You just need to find a new way of communicating with him. He's found a way of communicating with you. Now you've got to find a way of letting him in. And that was the beautiful thing about that particular reading with John. And I told this lady, whenever you're thinking of John, these feathers will appear in the most crazy, outlandish places. She says, they actually do. She said, but where do they come from, Gordon? And I said, well, they've got to come from somewhere. They don't come from the spirit world. They are apported from this world somewhere. I says, so either he's randomly getting them from birds that have cast feathers. I says, or there's some very bold looking swans going around Scotland at the moment, because they've got to come from somewhere. And again, I always remember this lady for her laughter and the way she left that meeting alive. She had committed herself literally to be almost dead because the way her son died. But what she said to me was, you've given me something, you've given me a practice. She says, nobody in my life has given me a practice since he died. My priest, my friends, my counselors. This is a practice you've given me. Because I told her, I said, you should sit down and talk to John at breakfast the way you would have done and just say, morning, darling, are you okay? Keep him alive in your mind. You're not doing something silly. She says, I do talk to him, but not like that. I said, well, talk to your lad, talk to your boy. I says, and let him know you're open for him. Ask him to bring you little things, maybe even feathers and different things. Ask him to give you things. And of course she did. For me, I keep in contact with a lot of the people that I've read for. And that particular lady came to see me some years later with a friend of hers who had also, she'd lost a daughter. And I tried to help that lady too. And she said, Gordon, I want you to do for her what you did for me. She says, because I feel that John and I have a whole new relationship. And I said, that's beautiful. She says, and every day I understand he's not going to be physical and I won't be able to hold him. She says, but I hold him in my mind. And I said, good. And I said, you know what? People can tell you all these things. You can't physically do this. You can't physically do that. I said, but mentally you can do anything. And that's exactly what she did. I would say to each person today that mediumship can't solve all your problems, guys. In many ways, it can give you tools to work with it, as I said earlier. And these tools that we would give you to work on yourself have to be applied. You have to keep going. You have to get stronger. Because do you know what? People don't die, especially our kids, don't die to hurt us. We hurt because they die. It's a very different thing. And the idea here that you can actually overcome this, there's a point where you don't think you can. But the moment they bring that message through, that little piece of evidence or whatever that says, wow, then you realize something else is at foot. Because if your son or daughter is in a spirit world, if they're existing somewhere else, their consciousness hasn't died, then quite honestly, that means you're not going to die as well. That also means you cannot die. Now, I use a saying in my work, you can't die for the life of you, that your life force won't let you die. And that's the part that lives on, guys. Your life force moves away from the physical, but it doesn't move out of your life. It's just that you don't know where to look for it. And in all my studies of grief, I've always felt that grief was a sense of disconnection. And I'm sure a lot of you could agree with that, that this feeling of being cut off, disconnected from that person's life. But then the moment you can connect with them spiritually, you can start to expand your mind a little bit. You can grow with that knowledge. And if anything, you can have a spiritual relationship with someone that you maybe never had that with in this life. And it becomes a whole new experience. As a medium, I would say to every one of you, based on my work, my research, the amount of cases that I've worked on as a medium, that we don't die. We really don't die, guys. And this is the most wonderful thing, because not only have I lost my fear of dying, and I help a lot of people not to have a fear of dying. But the great thing about that is you also don't have a fear of living, because that's a big one today, especially today. The fear of living is really big in people. But when you realize this is just so impermanent and it's just a snap of the fingers, considering eternity, wow, this is nothing. And when you can see things from that spiritual perspective, it does take a lot of the sting of death away. And I said it earlier, nobody can take the pains of your bereavement away from you, and don't let any medium tell you they can. They can't. But they can give you things in a process that will hopefully help you to look at different roads. The work that mediums do should be there only to heal and help the bereaved, and also to let the spirit world, remember, they want to come to you. On many occasions where I've appeared, maybe in interviews on television, sometimes with Trisha, where we have to debate with religious bodies or skeptics and all sorts of people, and a lot of them will, say these things. They'll have a go at me and say, "Well, you call up the dead," and I'll say, "I don't have a number for the dead, because the ones I talk to are very much alive, and I do not call anybody up. They come." And this is what I say, guys. So the spirit choose their moment, just like the story I told you with Alex. That was timed to perfection so that his mum and dad could get the reading that they needed, not necessarily the one they wanted, but the one they needed. And it caused a healing effect. And this is why, even when Mark and I spoke for the first time, and I said, I don't want to come on and do readings for people straight away. I want people to get to know me, to hear the sound of my voice, and to trust me. And then I'd be happy to come back and do something where I do some readings or whatever. But I want people to know that I'm coming from a good place, because for me, I don't do this for nothing. I do this to heal people. And the bottom line is, I am a healer. Any good medium is a healer. And that really is what I profess to be. But it's the knowledge of this that I hope some of you will take with you on your journey, the knowledge that you don't die. It actually becomes one of the most incredible parts of your life's journey. So many brave, wonderful people that I've connected with, their loved ones on the other side, have in turn become mediums in their own right, not giving messages, but healing other parents. And it expands and grows. My last little anecdote I will share with you, because for many years I used to work in Italy. I always get sent to all these countries where I do not speak the language. And I had many incredible experiences. It was a place called Casa dell'Albero, and it specialized in healing or working with parents who'd lost children. And myself and some other mediums would go there, and we would just, for the week, just do reading after reading after reading after reading. And I always remember the couple who came to me, many couples, but this particular couple came, and the father sat there. I recall he looked so much like Robert De Niro, this man. You could have swore you were looking at De Niro. And he sat with his arms folded up in his chest, really gruff looking. I thought, ooh, he looked like De Niro in Mean Streets kind of thing. That kind of De Niro. And he looked mean. And I thought, oh dear. And the woman was very open and excited. And their boy came through. Again, I always remember then, the guy's name, his name was Roberto. And I said, Roberto's here. And the mother said, mio bambino, mio Roberto. And he did not move. He just sat like this. And I thought, oh, I thought something would it? No, nothing. And then I bring more things. And the mother's screaming and pulling her hair. This is all good. This is the way they were Sicilian. This is the way Sicilians behave when they're grieving. And she cried and cried and cried. And it was just a moment. And I thought, I wish that poor man would get something. I'd love to see something. And I'm saying, Roberto, give me something for your father. And just out of nowhere, the boy gave me a message personally for his dad saying, thank you, Papa, for burying my ashes in the football stadium of Juventus, which is in North Italy. And the man just, the sigh. And then he just bawled. And then she sat like this looking at him as though, how dare you? And he cried and cried. And he came up to me at the lunch break, and he hugged me in a way. I thought he'd broke 3 of my ribs. I thought, oh, good God. And he hugged me and he says, thank you for giving me back my boy. I got my boy. And I thought, it's wow. I mean, nobody expresses like the Italians. They're wonderful people, but it was an incredible thing. I would leave those sessions feeling do you know what? If I do nothing else in my life, if nothing else good ever happens to me, I've already had my share, because I've watched so many people who were lost find a road to put the next step on again. And that's a beautiful thing, guys. Mediumship is an incredible thing. And I'm going to sum up this part before we go to questions and leave you with one of my favorite quotes, which I'm about to misquote for the sake of this particular meeting. But think about this. It was written by a British socialist in the late 19th century, a man called Gerard Massey. And he wrote, we are changing the word spiritualism to mediumship, but he wrote, mediumship has been to me, in common with others, such a lifting of the mental horizons and letting in of the heavens, a formation of faith into fact that I can only compare my life before it to that of travelling on board a ship beneath decks with all hatches fastly battened down, living like a prisoner by the light of a candle, until one splendid starry night, being allowed for the first time on the top deck to witness the stupendous mechanism of the heavens all aglow with the glory of God. Now that is what mediumship should be. Thank you. And I'm more than happy to take questions, guys, if you want to field them or address them to me, however you want to do it, Elizabeth. I'm
That
easy.
was beautiful. Oh my gosh, I just love that last metaphor of just being able to realize that there's so much more than just being
Oh,
below
yes.
deck and seeing the beautiful starry skies. And I think that that's one thing that I see many sad faces who are getting much happier from hearing you speak, but this journey that we're on is not all sad.
No.
We are learning so many exciting and new things that are things that we'd never even thought about before. We didn't have to think about them, but knowing that we are going to be with our kids,
Absolutely.
and that they're still right here, that they
Yeah.
are able to communicate with us, that we need only take the time to possibly meditate, possibly. I know that you were talking about that for certain that you have always been a medium.
Yeah.
There are smaller things that we can do, though, as members of this group that nobody wants to belong to be able to connect with our kids. And some of these parents who are in the group have actually expanded their mediumship abilities to a
They
point that
will.
I'm flabbergasted. But I know that there are questions, and I know that Mark
Sure.
is going to be fielding them. And I
Sure.
want to tell you, also, everybody keeps talking about how gorgeous your accent is, and they can't stop talking about that. And some of these people also have kids who love imitating Scottish accents, so it reminds them of, and a lot of people just want to give you a big hug.
Thank you all. That's
Which
most
isn't
welcome.
possible right now, but at some point it would be really nice to be just like that wonderful Italian man who, when you talk
Oh,
about
yeah.
Juventus, and
Roberto's father.
that's beautiful. So, Mark, do you have some questions that you'd like to go ahead and ask Gordon from the audience?
Sure.
So the
Okay.
first one comes from Mary, and she wanted to know, how did you know at a young age? What were the signs, or how did your mediumship unfold?
For me, I was only, from my recall, I was about 7 when I had an episode in my life where I saw a materialized spirit of a man whom I didn't know to be dead. And when I ran in to tell my mother of this, she got such a fright because she knew the man had died, obviously. But for me to run out and say, he's standing here, and he gave me a little message to say, tell your mother thank you for something. And when I did that, she was peeling potatoes with a knife. She dropped it, and she was startled and shocked because of what I'd said. Although at 7, may I say, you do not know you're a medium. You don't know you're doing anything different. It's only the reaction of the adults around you that make you think, oh, I'm different. And they shouldn't really. If you can learn if you have psychic children, don't make it a big deal. Let it be. Just watch and observe from a distance, and they'll be absolutely fine. It's how the parents react that make it kind of freaky for the children. It's absolutely lovely when it's the spirit world, though. And these episodes like that, Mark, followed me through my life until I was 21, when I had a big major experience of seeing a spirit for the first time as an adult. And it was because of that I went to a spiritualist church to learn about mediumship. And from there, I went into a development group and so on and so forth. And the rest, as they say, is history.
That's not too different from my father. His gift really was revealed at age 5, so pretty close.
Yeah.
So we have another question
Sure.
from Per. I lost it here. Where is it? She basically just said, and this is a question a lot of people have, but it's probably hard for you to even answer exactly because you don't know for sure. But she says, I understand my son is still around, but the next question is, what is it like on their side? Is it possible to know?
From my own understanding of the spirit world, I think the spirit world is a bit like this life in the sense that we have our own experience of it. But I would assume, again, it's a higher experience than this. It always is, because first of all, you're without a physical body. You're not connected to all the things that bring our physical body down. So the moment people die, there's a sense of not enlightenment, but expansion is a better word. So they feel lighter in luminosity, lighter in weight. There's a lightness to the whole experience of being in spirit. But because it's without time, you can't measure it with time. It's like, oh, my dad's been over for 3 years and he's never came through, or my son died 10 years ago and he's only given one message. So there's no time there. So there's nothing. So they're not doing things like we're doing. It's a state of being more than a place where we function like that. But they are much better off than us. And Mark, I'll just very quickly remind everybody here, if I can, that see, when we die, when we leave this physical body, guys, and we all see it as, oh my God, the worst thing that ever happens. Not to the spirit. To the spirit, it's the same as if you were living your life as we are now. Imagine we were caterpillars and our whole world was the size of a window box of flowers. So to a caterpillar, that's a big world it lives in. But the moment that goes through its metamorphosis in its cocoon, and then it comes out the other side as a butterfly, and as it lifts up above the world it thought was huge, it realizes that's nothing. Look what I can expand to now. Look what I can actually encompass in this new body, this light body. And that's what we have when we go into the spirit world, a light body.
Thank you, Gordon. That's great. Kind of like Plato's cave too, isn't it?
Oh, I love Plato's cave, yeah.
Christy wants to know, what is the biggest thing we can do to connect with our children, especially for those of us who are new to this?
Do you know, one of the nicest things you can do is just honoring them, and don't overdo it. Some people think if they do it more, it will become, clearer, better. I would say make an appointment with them, like once a week. I'm going to sit down and just have half an hour and thinking, recalling lovely memories. Look for the happy things, the reason why you loved them. So many people say, every time I think of my child, and it really hurts me because I think of how they died. You got to think of how they lived as well. And it's thinking of how they lived that lets them get close to you. Because when you open your mind to them, and you go, wow, I remember I took you here when you were 4. I remember you did this when you were 7. And let them know that you are upholding their life in your mind and in your heart. Now, one of the things about grief, when people are really grieving, it's so difficult for the spirit to get the message to them, because here's a whole teaching in one. But if you imagine that your light body, all of you, that you have this hard body here, this physical body, we can feel that. But there is a light body, we call it the aura. Some people will say they see lights around people and things, but that is the light body. That's the part of you that goes beyond, okay? So when you think about it, when you're sick or you're unhappy or you're sad or you've lost someone, your light body retracts into the body. So you are just really the shell of your physical self, and the light of you has gone in here. Now, the spirit need to work with the light body to get the message to you. And this is why the medium comes in, because I've learned over the years how to expand my light body. So if you can't reach your son, I can, or he can reach me. And what happens is, if you're sitting with me, I'm trying to open my light body to bring you into it, so that you feel the same as I feel for a moment. Wow, I feel it. because that's what we do. So, but if you can start to bring the joy back about the life that you shared, and I know it's difficult for some people, especially at the very beginning, but try to concentrate on the life they lived, not the death they had, for a while in that little appointed time, half an hour, and just remember a half an hour of love and memories, and go into that good place. And I'm sure there'll be a point where you start to feel a difference. The atmosphere around you will change if you do it at the same place, the same time, once a week. Honestly, your little appointment with spirit, call it.
Yeah, and it's key for that to be that positive thought, that happy memory.
Well, the happy and genuine happy memories, you don't need to create them. The reason people, I'll tell you, one of the best ways I've ever heard grief being put was by our Queen Elizabeth, when she visited the towers in New York after they were brought down, and she stood there and she looked at people, and people were crying, and the Queen very solemnly but respectfully said, grief is the price we pay for love. And it's only when we've loved, we grieve. So your grief is an honor as well. We don't deny it, because you're honoring them because you love them. And that's something I've never forgotten, because I need to know these things, because I deal with the bereft every day of my waking life. So I need to know these things. And I can assure you that feeling that you give out, authentic feeling, I do know you're around me, my darling. I'm just going to let you come when you're ready. I promise you. And if you do it correctly, you'll get a sense of change of atmosphere. And that's more sometimes to you than a message from a medium. To feel that they're there, that's a beautiful thing. And I wish that for all of you.
Here's a tough question from Amarla Stone. Do our
I love tough
children help
questions.
raise their children that they left behind? She says, I'm struggling. So I'm gathering that she's having to raise those children.
Well, yes, I would. I mean, the spirit try to help wherever they can. And for that lovely lady, I would say that, her family in the spirit world will be helping her family here. They really, really will. But also, what's nice there, if she can take her knowledge of this to that family too, then it's a beautiful thing. So we still need help from the physical world as well, but by honoring them, and if they can do that, the spirit always help wherever they can. They really do. So they will be helping.
Amy Sanders says, I do know that the afterlife exists, and I've had many messages and signs, yet I fall back into sadness that sometimes debilitates me to a degree. I guess it's probably normal for a lot of people, right?
I think, Amy, that is absolutely normal, because grief is not something you can overcome in one go. Grief is a process. And one of my dear old friends who lived till she was almost 90, and she'd lost her boy when he was 18, and he had a huge big career in front of him, got killed at the age of 18. And as old as she grew to, she said to me one day, Gordon, there's never a day when I haven't felt the pain of loss of my son. She says, it didn't stop me living. I carried on in spite of it to honor him. She said, but every day I felt it. I would never, ever tell people that pain goes away. It doesn't. But it's you who learns to strive to go on another day. And one of the great things, Amy, if you can learn this, try and make small accomplishments when it comes to grief. Some people think, let's get it all over with, let's do the big thing. You can't. Small accomplishments. Achieve little things, and you start to teach your mind once again to achieve. I'm achieving, I'm overcoming, and you train your mind to get back to that. But don't think you've failed in anything, Amy. You certainly haven't. You're just doing what most people, what all people at some point will do. So the fact that you're honest about it means that you're owning it. So it won't be long before you're in control of it. So next time I talk to you, Amy, you can tell me that you're learning how to deal with that, and I know you will. Trust me, I'm psychic.
The next one I can actually answer, but I'll let you answer it, and then I'll see if your answer is
Brilliant.
different from mine. Gloria wants to know, how can we connect or dream of our children? Connect with or dream of our children?
Yeah, by being open to it, you send out a thought to the spirit world, guys. That's what I would do. When you send out a thought to your children and the other side. Now, and this is one of the things I must say, because when people kind of try to make it happen, it doesn't happen. Do you know that thing? And anybody who's my age or older will know exactly what I'm talking about. When you want information from your brain and it won't give it, and you go, oh, and you struggle and strain, and then an hour later you're doing something mundane and it falls in. That's the same way we talk to the spirit world. Spirit world are slightly out of our periphery. So to try and drag them in takes a terrible amount of concentration. The best way to do it is to be off focus. So again, either you create a meditation time and you sit there patiently, you don't wait for an answer, but you will get no answer, I must say, if you don't have a question. And you learn to do it question by question, not, oh my God, what's it like over there? Oh my God, have you met Grandpa? Oh my God, have you done this? Oh my, too many questions. One question at a time. Before you go to sleep, if you want to do it in dreams, write your question down at the side of your bed so you're actually doing it physically. You're affirming it. Okay, my darling, can you show me where you are? Say it's that, or can you tell me who you're with? Whatever your question is. The biggest question that everybody asks of their loved ones in the spirit world, and I can assure you I've studied this, is, are you okay? It's the first thing they ask. Are they all right? Now, if you ask that question and you're looking to see a visual answer, you probably won't. Or hear an audible answer, you probably won't. What would happen is you'd probably have a really peaceful sleep. That would be their way of answering you. You would feel their contentment. So you need to understand the language of spirit. So ask a question like something, can you show me where you are? Or can you remind me of something that was special between us? And then if that dream contains a piece of information that you knew was relevant to both of you, you've built up the opening part of that conversation, guys. So do that. Don't be afraid to write things down. One question until you get an answer, because there might also be the point where they're not allowed to give you that particular answer. Some people use the spirit world, remember guys, like some cosmic know-it-all answer machine. You know, these cosmic ordering-y things. And I always say, you've got to be really careful what you order from the universe. It usually tends to come in a package that you don't like. So you get the thing, but along with it comes many other stuff. So yeah, back to, I bubble a lot. Mark, you need to shut me up sometimes. I talk for Scotland. But yes, so if you can do that, write them down, give yourself one thing, make it a program that you do. Don't do it randomly. I sent a thought out to my son, he never answered, so I sent another. Don't do that. One at a time, one question.
Yeah, I just add, you know, I've had a number of dream visits with my son, but the one that really stands out, one was, I would say, an out-of-body experience because it was more vivid than waking reality.
Yeah.
And I got that by, before I went to bed, I asked in a prayerful way for him to be there.
Yeah.
And I, more importantly, asked to remember it, because we have experiences in the night that we don't remember the next day.
Always, yeah, always.
So I got both gifts by doing that. So
yeah.
Next up, this one's interesting, from Donna R. My son was nonverbal. How would he talk through someone?
Through clairsentience, through sensation and feeling. And again, it's a bit like when I'm working in another country, in another language. I mean, I do some work for Japan, and I have to work on feeling and say, oh, I can feel your son. And he makes me aware that he was taller than me. He makes me aware that he was a very loving kid, da, 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 da. So by feeling is one thing. The other thing I will say, that in the spirit world, he's not nonverbal anymore. In the spirit world, he uses the language of spirit, which is telepathy. So she'll hear that in her mind and feel it in her mind. So, but again, feeling and telepathy, which would be something. He's probably quite adept at telepathy, especially with songs. And I don't know why I say that, but that's for her. It's something to do with songs you'll put into her head, and she'll go, wow, wow. And that's his way of contacting her.
Danielle, I know we have time for a few more questions. Danielle wants to know, will we be reunited with them? And is there anything different with suicides? Now we're getting into touchy territory.
No, absolutely not. Because once again, everybody has the potential to leave this planet in that particular way. And other than the fact that it's saying, these things are said in religions, remember. These are part of religious doctrine that say, if you take your own life, certain religions, not all religions, if you take your own life, you'll be stuck in some purgatory or hell or something like that. Now, all I can say is every single person I've brought through who's committed suicide, taking their own life, they have never once shown me anything other than that they are free and in a spirit world. They want to redress maybe the way they left their family or things that they left behind. They're not being punished. The sad thing is the people who get punished and who are really in purgatory are the people left behind, because they go into a very non kind of emotional state. It's a horrible state, this kind of altered state that they go into. But the spirit, once the spirit or the consciousness leaves the body, it's not held to anything. It's there to expand, and they will learn that was part of their journey. Everything that happens in this world happens because it should. Even the worst things in the world happen because it can. Because if you can imagine a life of eternity, then coming into this world is part of our journey to experience confinement, containment, fear, sadness, jealousy, lust, joy, all the things, love, in a physical way. So the non-physical thing is easy because we've been doing that. Remember, you were in spirit before you came here. This is not your home. This is a place you're visiting. You will go home again, and you will all be reunited, no matter how you left this body. The spirit was there before, the spirit is there during, the spirit is there beyond. And the thing that draws people together is love. The wonderful Tricia Robertson taught a very, very valuable lesson many, many years ago when asked a question about, do people go to different levels in the spirit world? And Tricia's bell jar, I have used it over and over again. Tricia, I hope you don't mind. I always credit you with it. But she talked about gases in a bell jar, and that they will rise to levels. And each will find the level that it can rise to. Some will go higher than others. And it's not about the height or whatever. It's just where they resonate, where they sit. And that would happen if you loved somebody in this life. Then that love you have would create the same, if you want to call it some kind of spiritual signature, which would mean you would both rise to the same place. So when somebody said to me once, well, when I die, will I have to be with my husband? And I said, did you love him? She says, do I sound like I loved him? I said, you will never see him again. And then I laughed and I said, do you know what? Actually, you must have loved him. And in some way, you both had to share some weird lesson, and you both chose it at some point. So anyway, once again, I digress, Mark. Carry on.
We're down to 1 minute. If we want to keep it to an hour, if you want to go a little longer, we can.
Go on, ask another question.
Okay. This next one says, and I think you just answered this, do people on the other side—
But I'm psychic, I do try and do that, yeah.
Yes. Do people on the other side feel grief or sadness?
Well, first of all, the way the question's put, I will change, because there are no people on the other side, spirit on the other side. And spirit learn to adapt very, very quickly beyond the emotion. Remember, the emotions are human and animal and human. We experience emotion. Spirit is void of that. So being spirit, you would kind of be like Spock from Star Trek. All of a sudden you'd become Vulcan and essentially, and it's not that you're non-feeling. It's not that. It's just that you're not as affected. You see, we live in what I call the emotional whirlpool, and it goes round and round and round. And there's certain people there who pull some of us out of the emotional whirlpool. And that's because we fear, and usually everything comes from fear. And that's where all that comes from. But in spirit world, there's nothing to fear. There are no dark places. It's light. Yeah.
And in this physical body, our consciousness is filtered through our brain, and our brain has a lot to do with how we feel things in this body.
Yeah,
you know?
absolutely.
On the other side, it's not like that.
No. And it doesn't need to be like that in this world either. You can train yourself to be more spiritually conscious. And in that sense, then physical pain and things is less. There are those who are adept at such things. And what comes to mind is in Tibet, the Reapers, the Miller Reapers and things who can actually do these astonishing things and feel nothing because they have become more spiritually conscious than physically. So,
Ashley wants to know, do you have any suggestions on how to combat the doubt? I received many signs from my child, but doubt always creeps in at some point. How do I get to a point of knowing?
Stop doubting. She has to do it. Because, you know, there is no cure for that other than you. You are the one who doubts. Doubt is not something that's given to you. Doubt is something you do. Stop it. There you are. 2 words. Stop it.
Mary wants to know the name of your church in London. Maybe she lives in the area and wants to go there.
It's called the London Spiritual Mission. And it's in Pembridge Place. It's a very old establishment. It was opened in 1912, and all the great mediums through the times have been there. Wonderful place.
As you can imagine, a bunch of people now are asking, is it possible to get a reading?
Yeah. I'm kind of putting that to one side at the moment. Guys, do you know the thing I'll say, Mark? I do really genuinely love to help people, and I would love to come back on and do something for your group where I can do some readings and things, and even where there's somebody who desperately needs things. I'm more than happy to try for you in the future. But right now, do you know what? I'm just not taking any more at the moment. People say, do you not do readings now? I do. I just can't open up a diary to do any more. So that it looks like I'm not doing any, but I'm always doing readings. So it's just, I've got a lot on with readings, as you can imagine. And I only ever work for people who lose, and it's usually kids as well. So.
Yeah, I mean, you'd have a 5-year waiting list.
It's ridiculous. Yeah, and it makes you sound silly. It makes you sound arrogant or flighty, and you're not, I'm not any of that. I hate letting people down. I really do.
Gordine sent an interesting message. She says,
I love that name, Gordine.
Yeah, Gordine Donovan. She says, my daughter is flashing the light she uses to communicate with me, and it's flashing a lot right now.
Good girl. Good girl, because again, if that's your calling card, that's your signature, then work with it. Think about the first messages that ever came through when what we call modern spiritualism in the USA, in Hydesville in New York State, and it was these tapping noises. Is there anybody there? Yes. Are you male? Yes. And so spirit need a way for you to learn the language or the thing that the phenomena they're going to use to work with you. So the flashing light, I like the girl of the flashing lights. I'll just call her Lighthouse, because that's what that's about. That's to save her mother. That's what she's doing that for, to flash the lights to say, Mum, I'm your lighthouse. I'm your beacon of light. Follow me. And I know she's going to help her mum. So that's cool.
I think we're getting close to the end of the questions. Here's one. This one's tough to answer. Patty wants to know. She says, God bless her, I have 3 kids in spirit. Wow. Are they together? Question mark.
Yes. I don't even need to think about that. No.
Here's a Tanya. I'm 2 years in and I feel like I saw signs or felt my son more than I seem to do now. I wonder why that might be. Am I too desperate?
It's not that you're too desperate. I think when we get a sign, this is why spirit are very, very kind the way they do this, guys, and it's not that they're being mean. Sometimes when we get experiences of the feeling of a loved one after death, we want it again and again and again and again. And if it's not got the same quality it had the time before, we feel let down. So there's got to be a gap that happens between it, because we've got to grow in those gaps where we don't get it. And then when you do grow a little bit, it will come back. You're not failing at anything. It's not that you're doing anything wrong. It's just there's a gap between the next big experience, and the big experience will come. Don't think you're doing anything wrong. It will be okay. You'll get it again.
Let's see here. Gloria wants to know, is it better to connect using conductors like mirrors or water?
People play around with all sorts of different things, Gloria, and I always say, if something works for you, go with it, whatever floats your boat, love. For me, I'm a medium, so things just come to me, people's spirits come, but if somebody needs a prop or a tool to do something, fair enough. Again, with spirit, remember, I'm a medium, and I get days sometimes where I don't get a connection with the spirit world for people too. So even though we desperately want something, sometimes that's the day they won't give us it, not because they're being mean, as I say, because it's not the right moment. Do you know Sylvia Brown, the psychic I used to work with in America? Some of you might have heard of Sylvia, but there was one thing Sylvia used to say when people would say, Sylvia, my son's not been through, I've asked my son, 10 times, to give me an answer, and he hasn't. And she'd say, he did, he says now. And they'd go, what? And she said, the fact that he didn't answer. And that was the way Sylvia spoke. He did, he says now, move on, next. And she would do this. But that was a good Sylvia Brown impersonation. But I have to say, she was right. It's not that if we ask a question where there's a yes and no value to it and no answer, take that as a no. Sometimes no answer just means no. And it's not, as I say, what you've got to do is to build this up slowly, guys. And don't beat yourselves up for the time you didn't get an answer to something. Don't be hard on yourself, because there's the first thing. Your kid doesn't want to see you hurt yourself because of them. So anytime you do that, don't do that. Just say, okay, I'll try again another time. It's a game of patience, and I'm sorry about that, but it really is.
Marla Stone has a question here. I think she answers her own question. It's pretty obvious to me anyhow. The pendulum clock that my daughter hated to hear stopped the day she died. What's up with that?
That's a girl who knows how to do things. She's got a big impact. If she can stop clocks, wow, that's powerful. But again, what a message is that? That's your message. I'm okay. Look what I just did from where I am.
This isn't a question, but I thought I'd read this to you from Joe G, who's from New Zealand. She says, this is amazing. My heart is feeling so much love from the gifts Gordon has shared with us. Practical, conscious tools that I can do as well as to stop it self-doubting. So grateful. Thank you for this platform.
Do you know, I'll tell you all something. Whenever I take a class of new mediums or people who want to learn to be mediums, now, if I were teaching you, Mark, and I say to you, you know, give Trisha a reading, and you do, you know, Trisha, I've got your mother here. I know that she died at this age, and you get 5 things. And then the 6th thing you say, you know, your mother played tennis, and Trisha says, no. And you go, oh, you will go home and you will forget the first 5 things you said to Trisha. And the only thing that will be in your mind is the no. Because that's the nature of this. People stick to the one doubt and they carry it. Now, nobody's making you do that. You're doing that yourself. This is where I say, stop it. You're the one, if you doubt, say, it's just as easy not to doubt as it is to doubt. So teach yourself to say, stop. That's my thing. One word, stop. Don't allow it to harbor in your mind. Take control of it. Say, I'm not doubting that. No. So, and it's when we start to improve that. I mean, I'm so lucky. I spent so many years of my life working with the lovely Louise Hay, who was the queen of affirmations. You know, when I would say to Louise, would be having dessert after a dinner or something, I say, oh, Louise, you should try this. It's to die for. And she would take my hand slowly and say, sweetheart, it's to live for. Nothing's to die for. And so I mean, I'm used to the queen of affirmations in my head, and since she died, I do get lovely messages from Mrs. Hay now and again. So
Gordine's back again, and she wanted you to
Gordine.
know, thank you, Gordon. It was my Scottish grandmother who created my name after my uncle Gordon Mackle. I can't even say the name.
McIlvaney or something. McIlvaney.
MacLillivray. McIlvray. Yeah.
Oh, that's actually too Scottish for me. I'm a Glasgow boy.
Let's see here.
McGilvery.
That sounds like. Oh, there you go. That sounds right.
McGilvery. Yeah. Thank you. You see, the names come.
Babette wants to know: do you believe a person's type of death and timing is planned? Is there ever anything we could do to prevent it?
Yeah, there is. I mean, for me, we do have plans, kind of thing, but it's like we have what I call junctions of time. The way I was shown it by my own spirit teacher on the other side was that we have a life that goes from A to Z, but we can actually get off that life and take different patterns because of choice. So it's like one of my cousins, she was killed, she was murdered, terribly so, back in the 1970s. And the thing was, she could have gone 2 ways that night, and she chose to go that way. There was 2 timelines, one ended, one didn't. And this is the way it works for us, that we do have choice up to a point. We have free will, which says, actually one of the readings I did after the 9/11 tragedy was a family whose son was killed, and he changed his appointment. He was to go there the day after, and he hurried it, brought it a day forward. He didn't have to, he did, and he went to his destiny, which was to die that day. There was another friend of mine whose daughter actually walked away from the towers that morning to do something totally different and thought, I shouldn't be doing this, but something inside her carried her away and made her follow her instinct. That was a different timeline. So we have I would say we have many timelines, and we don't know. Thank goodness we don't always know. We've turned a corner, which actually going the other way could have been a very different story. And it works both ways. You know, it's how we meet people, it's how we fall in love, different things. There's different parts to our destiny. It's not just one road. there are many different things, and it can change. It can change based on our particular thing. But the thing is we learn that we are born, we will die, and in the middle, we should experience as much as we can. We really should.
Here's our very last question.
Okay.
Or there's two more, but let me hit you. Can you speak about gender and how spirits show up for you?
Gender, you mean in spirit or spirit? But obviously, to identify themselves, they have to come through in their gender to be identified.
So
you
in
see,
the case of someone who was transitioning, maybe?
okay, yeah, but that's a human thing.
Right.
That's nothing to do with spirit. That's to do with human choice and personal choice. And if that's part of somebody's experience, that's their experience. So, but we're just spirit. At the end of the day, we're all spirit.
Yep.
There was another question to the next one.
How do you know inside yourself, what sensation do you experience or sense are you feeling that you recognize as spirit communication? And I don't know if they mean that versus just psychic communication or just in general.
Well, the simple difference between psychic and spiritual are, I do a reading for Trish and tell her about her life. That's psychic. I'm reading Trisha. I'm reading Trisha's past, present, and maybe even giving her things to look for in the future. That's a psychic reading, me reading a person about their life. A spirit reading is me saying to Trisha, I've got your father here in the spirit world. His name's Tom, and he wants to give you da, 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 da. That's a spirit message because I'm now talking from spirit to Trisha. So that's the two different things. So, and again, every medium is psychic. Not every psychic is a medium. But every medium has to open up the vibration through that sensitive level of being attuned to the person sitting opposite them. So you are picking up psychically from the person, but the message itself takes you. Here's a lovely way of looking at this, and Trish, I hope you agree with this one, but it's something I've always said, that it's like radio waves. So the psychic radio wave band, if you want to call it that, between me and Mark right now, and I'm looking at Mark and I'm tuning into AM radio, that's the band we're on. But when I go to link with, say, Mark's child in the spirit world, all of a sudden I go up to FM. It's a faster frequency. So I can still be working on the two frequencies at the same time, as long as I'm aware of it. Some people are not aware of it. But I think, oh my God, I've now switched in. This is no longer me reading Mark. I've got Mark's son here. And now I'm downloading from him and actually passing it. So I see it like radio waves, very much so. And I think it's no surprise that the people who created radio actually thought there was a way to create machines that they could bring the spirit through, because it is very, very similar. That you're tuning in with particular frequencies, psychic frequency, then you adjust to the higher frequency of spirit.
So I'm going to limit it to two quick questions, and no more to be sent, because otherwise they keep trickling in.
That's absolutely
This one kind
fine.
of is on the heels of the last one. And this is something I've thought of myself, because sometimes I get messages and sometimes I'm like, is this just my imagination or is this from spirit?
Yeah.
And then you figure that out, but each person has to get there on their own to figure out how do you delineate between the two. But the question is from Sim, I mean, how do you recognize spirit message versus your own thought or imagination?
That's the question everybody asks when they do this. Well, for me, I don't think. Real mediumship is spontaneous and it comes out your mouth before you. Sometimes if I give a message, it's the first, I hear it at the same time as the person does when they get it. And I think, oh, good God, I hope this is correct because I've just said it. So it's very, very spontaneous. I think the moment we think, we create a brain process, and mediumship doesn't come out of your brain. So for me, it's all around your light body, and you feel the spirit in the light body, you feel this vibration, and then you say, I've got your father here, and boom, next thing, things are coming. So when you have to think a lot, it could actually be in your own head. It could be you that's doing it. So.
Last question. Are we
And
able
finally,
to heal other people, or does it depend on whether that is a person's time? So I think they mean if somebody's ill or whatever.
Can we do healing? Yeah.
Are they able to be healed, or is it their time to go, or do you have a way of knowing it?
Well, yeah, and once again, remember, sometimes the greatest healing for some people is to die from this world and be reborn in a world of light. So healing, the first 3 people I practiced healing on died very quickly afterwards. Just so you all know, I did get better at it. I've got a better record now. But the first 3 people I touched died. But they were actually dying. And one of the reasons I felt really disappointed, and my lovely old teacher said to me, "No, son," she said, "the fact that you have this beyond belief in life after death, you gave them something to take with them. You helped them to go over easier. That's a healing." She says, "Not every healing saves a physical life. Some healings go beyond this." And that is actually true. But yes, we can heal. And the essence or the element of that is just compassion, purely compassion.
I did a healing on my sister when she was terminally ill, and I remember afterwards sending a note to Linda Williamson, who's a medium friend of mine in the London area, and she had responded, and she says, because my sister was out of it, and then she woke up and said, "They said what you did helped." I'm like, "Who is they?" Well, Linda Williamson then wrote me back. She goes, "Not every healing is to keep somebody here, but it's to make the transition smoother." So that's exactly the
Absolutely.
same. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Well,
I don't know
thank you
why,
so
but
much.
I hear, do you know the song I hear? I don't know why I hear it. "Ain't no sunshine when she's gone. Ain't no sunshine when
Oh,
she's
Bill Withers.
gone." But it's, yeah, and it was for you. "It's not
Oh,
warm when she's away. Ain't no
that's
sunshine
interesting.
when she's gone. And this house just ain't no home. Anytime she goes away." Do-do. And it's for you.
Well, that's interesting because my sister actually wrote Tricia knows about this, but my sister wrote a secret code in and put it in a sealed envelope before she passed, and it was about a song.
Okay. Well, that song's for you from her.
Yeah. Thank you.
You're
Very
welcome.
nice.
So she's
So thank you
teasing
so
you
much.
there, Mark. She's giving you a little teaser. If she can do
Yeah.
one song, she can do another. Trust me.
Well, she was a singer too, so
Ah.
yeah.
And that's why I kept singing. I'm thinking, why won't you shut up and stop making me sing all the time? I don't want to keep singing here. But cool.
This is absolutely amazing. I am just so thrilled about everything that you've said. There are so many wonderful things that are being said in the sidebar.
Excellent.
I want to just tell you that if you ever have a chance to come back and speak to us, we would be so
Of course I
honored.
will.
And
It will be my
everyone's
pleasure.
asking if you'll come back. One thing that we do want to just ask, I know that you don't do readings really, or that it's hard to get in for a reading. Do you do any development courses?
I do. I do.
Is that something that maybe we could include in this YouTube video, just a little bit of information about how to find out about those development?
Absolutely. Do you know, probably on my own website and on Facebook, actually, I'm saying my website, I am the most non-techie person you will ever meet. And Trisha used to laugh sometimes because I can sometimes come up with people's exact dates of birth and numbers of this and numbers of that. And she'll tell you, I sometimes forget my own birthday, my own age, my own house number. So I know it's not me that does this, guys, but I know on Facebook, I do lots of different things. But I'll tell you something, if you guys ever wanted me to do just a little group of teaching some of the people who are parents who have had loss, I'd be more than happy to do that as well.
That would be wonderful.
And I keep it really simple. And even on the Zoom platform, I've learned to adapt all my stuff from PowerPoint to Zoom so that I get everybody working and interactive, doing readings with each other. And I always end up doing some readings for people. I can't really stop it if it happens. So, but yeah, keep in touch and I will come up with something for you guys, I promise.
Well, everyone's saying yes, yes, yes. I'll tell you, I think we'll move things around if you're able to do it on a certain day and we have someone scheduled.
Yeah,
we'll
sure.
try to do whatever we can to get you back as quickly as
Not a problem.
possible, whenever it's a possibility for you. Thank you, Trisha.
But I'll talk, Mark, if I can talk to you in the future and we'll talk about doing something special for you guys if I can. Because
Awesome.
one of the
Thank
things it's really, really difficult to, do you know, for me, if you go into an auditorium or a theatre or a big hall and you've got all these people there and you know you only have the time or the ability to do 8 or 9 readings for that whole group, and you really feel, oh God, I wish I could have done more. But one of the nice things I have done over the years, and I only ever do it, it's not a thing I have ever charged for it, but I'll get a group of people, say it's a group of parents, I have done that. and we just go into a group and we'll sit, and then I'll just chat to them and see who comes through and who doesn't. And sometimes we just have conversation, and then bang, somebody pops in. And that's also a nice way of doing it, because it's more intimate and more close. And sometimes it gets too lost in the big groups. Sometimes it's nicer if it's intimate and people can really feel the energy, because I want people to feel the energy. I want them to feel the loved ones, not just be told about them. You need to take, part in it as well. You need to feel it, and then it's real mediumship. So
I'll connect with you
let's-
later on.
let's
we'll have a chat
definitely
about that, Mark.
follow up about this. I am so excited about
My
having
pleasure.
both you and Tricia here, as well as Mark, doing all the questions. Thank you, Irene, for everything that you've done as well. Thank you all as parents for being here, and thanks for having your kids come and show up as well. And we'll definitely follow up with Gordon, Mark, and Tricia to be able to make this happen again. And have a wonderful rest of the evening for those of you who are over across the pond, and then all of us here, have a wonderful afternoon. It's wonderful to see all of you. Thank you. And
Take care, everybody. God
Bye.
bless. And you
Bye.
can't die for the life of you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank
so
you.
much.
Guys, God
Thank
bless.
you.
And I'll see you all
God
again.
bless.
Thank you.
Okay.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Thank you so much. Have a great evening.
Archie,
Bye-bye.
bless you.
God bless. Bye,
Thank
darling.
you so
Bye-bye.
much.
Bye.